right. You see it, Ryan?
Yep, I see it.
All right, go ahead and get us started.
Wonderful. So Terrence is feeling just a little sick today, so I'll be captaining this ship mostly. So today's event is based on the realm of understanding men. And we titled this as He Learned the Game Young, Part One. And what we're going to be talking about today quite a lot is what went through our lives as men when we were younger, what really shaped us, and how did those experiences, those movies, those TV shows, those games shape us and teach us to be the men we are today. And the whole point of this is to give everyone an understanding of if you really want to reach somebody, which we'll talk about, you want to understand what shaped them. And if you can understand what shaped a lot of men, you have a much easier way of not only connecting to them, but understanding them. And this is why we really wanted to do this series.
Absolutely. So I'll be hopping in, consistently, but Ryan's going to be leading the way. I appreciate you. And let's get to introductions.
Okay. For those who don't know me, my name is Ryan. I'm a relationship engineer. What I focus on is the mechanics, the process, the planning, and the motivation behind building and maintaining long-lasting, holistic, happy, healthy relationships. And I do this from my own understanding as a systems engineer working in business development, where I help companies understand at a very core level when we want to do business with somebody else, how do we evaluate them? How do we approach them? How do we do our market research? How do we establish a relationship with others? But it also comes from my own personal experiences as a man who built my own version of this process. Terrance also built his own version of the process, but we have both followed it and are also now happily married and have seen the people around us also become happily married. So, what I like to do is partner with Terrance, who's going to tell you a little bit about himself in a second and his unique perspectives on what he brings to the table regarding relationships and, frankly, just helping people understand relationships and get better at making relationships. Terrence, take it away.
Okay. Hello, I'm Terrance. I'm a criminologist and I'm a former criminal profiler. I specialized in crimes against children and some gang stuff that was going on in the Metro Detroit area as well as Chicago. And so I took that kind of profiling background to just more generally look at problematic behavior. And my main goal is to notice problematic behavior and problematic people early on before we start attaching them and allowing them to attach themselves in our lives. And so, what we do in, relation with what Ryan does is we help people create a better, healthier map for the life they want. Who should be in their life, who shouldn't be in their life, and also, other ways to connect with individuals. So we'll be doing a presentation very soon on emotional intelligence, and it's kind of like a precursor to truly adopting active listening and an emotional intelligence. We put together this presentation that will likely help us know more about the backgrounds of some of the people around each other. Let's get started.
So, the first part we're getting into really focuses on what we saw growing up. What are the toys that we had? What are the movies, the TV shows? And did they really mix at all? So, Terrence, you remember Transformers, right?
Yeah, so we went with this slide because one of the earliest memories I have growing up is watching
Mhm.
the Transformers and G.I. Joe cartoon. And I specifically remember this concept. I remember heroes and villains in battles. I remember cool gadgets, vehicles, and transformations. I remember bright colors, explosive actions, and catchy theme songs. But that came at another cost. And something that doesn't get talked about enough is even back then, companies were looking at children as an amazing resource to funnel money into their pockets.
Mhm.
So the producers of the show, what did they see? They disguised 22-minute toy commercials as entertainment. So after you watch the G.I. Joe or Transformers show, while you're watching it, you see the commercials for their toys. So as soon as the show's over with, what did I do? I ran to my parents. I want the toys. I want this. I want that. Um, Also, strategic emotional manipulation through characters, creating urgency and social pressure through commercials framed as toys and must-have items to fit in with friends. The reason this is important is the people that are consulted with these companies, they know what they're doing.
Mhm.
So, in order to keep happiness with the friendships, often there's a constant need to consume. Okay, this was the new cool toy 3 episodes ago. Now, this is the new toy you should have now. Okay, and there's this constant need to keep things going. And I wasn't aware of it, but I was a byproduct of it. But I do remember at a certain age, I realized that I had all these toys, and a lot of them I didn't even play anymore because they were old. And old became not necessary. What were your thoughts, Ryan, on the growing up like that?
It was interesting because it was also something like a status symbol. So, like, if you had that toy from 3 episodes ago, once it became not relevant anymore with the new one, you kind of lose your status. So, in part, it was really pushing men towards having or wanting, at the very least, the means to have these things. So it pushes us more in towards the consumer type of culture. And what we'll talk a little bit more in the future is, if I want all these things and I can't have them, a lot of men when they grow up and they get money, they want to find a way to afford all of these things. And really, it's about men having fun and being able to afford our toys and putting money into our toys. Now, which ones we do, which ones we're interested, are also shaped kind of by our communities and the shows we watched. So I saw slightly another part of this, not just Transformers or G.I. Joe, but like Beyblades. So and Pokemon cards, and we'll talk about like trading card games in a little bit, but the thing about Beyblades is it or similar games like that, it wasn't just it's the hero or the antagonist or the cool villain, toy from the show or the movie. Like it's a physical object that I can now use to compete against my friends. And so now we're not only just collecting them, but we're trying to find who the best person is to use these stuff. And we're going and buying them and trying to find out which the best one is, and then we're competing with it. So it's not just consuming too. Now it's how are we going to find out who's better at this thing that may not ultimately matter in the future? But it instantly puts us in a competitive nature, not just a consuming nature, but a competitive nature. And now we're having fun. So the imprinting of reality is those movies, those TV shows, when they make toys, it becomes real to us because we can hold it in our hand and say, this represents something that I like. And that's very powerful. So I think even to this day, even there's still newer Beyblades being made and people still wanting to go play with them. So it's a cross, multi-generational idea.
Absolutely.
Next slide. So something I wanted to talk about, when we're getting into the realm of these toys or even in the realm of video games, and we're talking about things that are competitive in nature. And the thing about being competitive is you need to be valuable. Either you're somebody who has the information and can teach others when you're on a team. When you're playing Call of Duty, are you the guy that knows the map? Are you the guy that can raise the people on your team to be better? Can you show them all the tips and tricks of the game? And if not, are you the guy who reads something like Game Informer to go out and seek information? So a lot of us not only had to figure out what was valuable by putting the time in and playing, and then going to our friends and testing out whether that knowledge was even useful or not. But it also forced us to do a basic market research and to subscribe to things like Game Informer that told us a little bit about the games coming in the future, the consoles coming in the future. I was subscribed to this in the early 2000s when they were saying when the Wii was going to be released by Nintendo. Like I remember that clearly. And it gave us the tips and tricks and a strategy guide. So we're not just being competitive. This is showing men that what's valuable to us is from an early age, what is your strategy? And if you don't have one, where can you go get the information to build a strategy? And what I included here is a small excerpt. So just quick aside. This was so important. This has been going on since I believe the 1990s. That GameStop, the owner, discontinued it in 2024, and it was such a blowback to the community that another company bought them out in 2025. And not only did they bring them back, they hired a lot of the original employees from Game Informer to try and bring it back to its most authentic self. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically, Matt Miller was one of those employees that he brought back, and he could not believe how much of a blowback it was on the community. So, this is something that's near and dear to a lot of men, especially under the age of 40.
Absolutely.
Is sorry. Yeah, just a quick recap is what's valuable to us, what was shown to be valuable is to go and be valuable by understanding how to be competitive and what will help. But also, we have to understand how to build a strategy. And if we're not smart enough to build a strategy, who can we learn from and go there?
Absolutely. And by the end of this, we're going to tie this into relationship dynamics because a lot of people are looking, and I get a lot of individuals asking, like, where are the good men? Where are these guys at? Where are these communities? And that's why one of the reasons we put together this presentation, so I can show a lot more about what is the thinking of a lot of modern males and how
Mm,
did they arise to this thinking? So if you go back to Gales, I would look at Game Informer when I was like 7 or 8.
hmm
You could not be a legitimate kid in a lot of circles if you couldn't win the games that you were playing. So you
hmm
had so much pressure to perform. And anything that gave you a strategic advantage was like gold back then. And we're just going to start off with Game Informer, then we start building it to other things that happened in our lives. So, next one. Passion
So
versus addiction. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, man, I'm just trying to help you save your voice.
Appreciate you.
So, I mean, one of the areas that men may get some criticism, right, is, well, how much money are you spending and what point is it a passion and what point is it just a straight addiction? So, Terrence, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I want to go back to the original biggest addiction that I remember growing up, and
hmm
it was Pokemon. Like
hmm
it was nothing like I had ever seen before. Especially in the inner city, people got beat up all the time, robbed for their Pokemon cards. It I'm serious. It changed. It's such a cultural phenomenon that a lot of like the boomer generation or people that weren't actively involved, they didn't understand. But we're going to go through some of the facts right here because we're still living a lot of these precursing events to this day. So, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon cards. It dominated childhoods in the late 90s and early 2000s. Many schools, I was part of one of those schools, had to ban
hmm
cards due to distractions, theft, and fighting. Like that word, you just hide them. Yeah, right. But 60 to 80% of all boys in this time frame interacted with Pokemon during its peak years. Like it
hmm
didn't matter whether you were in the inner city or the suburbs. If you didn't know what was going on, you just got passed by. And,
Yep.
Ryan, you can go through the skills that you needed because it wasn't just a game. It was like the first time I really remember being involved in like a real capitalistic system where you had real losers and winners.
Absolutely. Like, especially with not just Pokemon, but like Yu-Gi-Oh! I remember there were movies that came out, and with those movies, they released special edition cards you could only get if you went to go see the movie. So
Yes.
we went multiple times to see the same movie and tried to convince our parents to see if we could get the card we wanted. And so there's a real immediate understanding of the monetary value of the cards. So not only are you building a deck and trying to create a strategy to be competitive to see who the best Pokemon master is or best Yu-Gi-Oh master, but like if you trade a card and you don't know its value, people can screw you over very quickly. And I learned that lesson. I learned that lesson with Yu-Gi-Oh! When I had a card that somebody convinced me was crap, but they wanted it because it looked cool and they traded it to me for something else. And the next day I found out how badly I got ripped off and they said, well, it sucks to be you. You should have known better. And
Same
that
thing
was
happened
at
to me.
I was 6 or 7 years old and
Abs-
men are and kids boys are doing this to each other because of how competitive the nature is. So we got to know a real value of the just the cards that we're dealing with. We need to figure out what is valuable and how to get it, and we got to build a strategy. And we're competing, and when we say competing, the reason it had to be banned, believe it or not, like we tried to skip our nap times in kindergarten in first grade to play. We tried to do it in line at lunchtime. During recess, instead of running around, we had mats that we would bring out and play. After school, we did the same thing. This was more than just like a cool game or collector's thing that we could just get addicted to. This was more than that. This was like a level of being for us. So, with that being said, you got to anticipate enemy tactics. You got to come up with a strategy during the game. Outside of the game, you got to know how to negotiate. You got to know how to get information from people. We didn't grow up with the internet in our earliest years. So you needed to understand not only that, it's not just you can't just go search on a website. You need to know who has the information and how to get it out of them. Then you needed to understand how to play the game, how to figure out all the rules, any hidden items. Sometimes it was team like 2v2, so you needed to understand how to play with other people. And not only that, but during this game, it has a point system. So sometimes your strategy may require that you look like you're losing for most of the game, but you got to be patient, just like in chess. You got to calculate your moves, and it's an uh, it's an exercise in delayed gratification. Instead of just being able to buy the cards and have the deck, you got to know how to use them and then you got to be patient when things aren't going your way. So you can come up with the right strategy. And after you've lost 10, 15, 20 times, you withhold that excitement or withhold that frustration until you enact the perfect plan and win.
Yeah, it's like
That's what
playing
it was
poker with
like for us
kids.
growing up.
It was like playing poker with kids.
Hmm.
And but you don't look at it while you're engaged in the system, you don't look at it like this. It's just what is necessary to win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something to just point out. Uh, not a single person, this is not on you guys, but not a single person put in the chat that these cards don't make sense. And this was another important point. This looks like an AI or fake image, like somebody made them, but these are based off of Yu-Gi-Oh card characters that were printed as if they're Pokemon cards. And when we were young, there were a lot of companies ripping off Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards. And if you didn't know which ones were real or how to determine they were real, your parents or you, if you were allowed to spend your allowance money on them, were purchasing stuff that people wouldn't even let you use. So even buying a fake card and trying to use it was considered cheating. It didn't matter if you didn't know better. We would throw that card out. We'd throw you out from playing with us.
Exactly. It's ignorance of the rules did not mean that you weren't still subjected to the rules. It was a real no mercy situation, but it's happening with kids. So,
Hmm.
like again, I was obsessive back then too. You want to think of how many hours we spent getting good at this? I mean thousands of hours.
Hmm.
And you'll see this mindset trickling into other parts of especially millennial men and um late Gen Z men's minds. This desire to I'm going to spend 95% of my time getting unbelievably good at one thing.
Hmm.
But a lot of that is done in isolated locations. Because you
Yep.
think when you were getting really good at this game, you weren't just hanging out with everybody. It was either you by yourself usually or you with a couple of friends figuring this out. Because
Yep.
you don't want everybody else to know because then they know your strategy.
It's kind of like small study groups in college. They can't
Yeah.
be too big because then they're not helpful. So they need to be small enough and you need to have the right group of people that actually help you get better. Exact same thing.
You're right. That's is exactly what it looked like. Good
Hmm.
point. So what I want to switch over to is now think of that child growing up. And there was a point when I put down Game Informer, and a lot of young men put down Game Informer to play video games. And not too far away from Game Informer when you were at the bookstore was DuPont Registry. DuPont Registry was like it was like a toy book for adults, but it was full of cars, boats, airplanes, and it was all these amazing things that you wanted to experience one day. Like my mom signed me up with DuPont Registry. I would get a new magazine every month. And this company's still in existence. It's not as big as like cars.com, but if you go on DuPont Registry, they're selling planes, mansions, and exotic cars. But when I was in the seventh and eighth grade, we would pine over DuPont Registry, looking at all the cars, looking coming up with schemes of how we were going to do it. And just as a conversation starter, I've never really had anyone ask me, like as an adult, other than like Ryan, what was the DuPont registry like? Because that would immediately take me back to like eighth, ninth, and 10th grade when I would pine over this. Like, I want to explain if you want to know the future of like sports car or classic car values, one of the greatest predictors is looking at what cars millennial men looked at when they were young. So like this vehicle right here that was on the cover of this, I wanted it so bad I bought it as an adult. Like I have that car. And I don't even drive it that much, but I wanted it so bad growing up. And so many of the millennial men, that's how our lives became. Especially if you're not able to notice your own programming, is we're essentially buying and living the life we fell in love with when we were like, I don't know, Ryan, what'd you say, 12 to 19?
Like 9 or 10, man.
I'm not going back that far. I wasn't that imaginative at 9 or 10. The reason I
Fair
say
enough.
12 to, I, the reason I say 12 and 19 is how many young men say that, even older men say they want their life to look like a Grand Theft Auto server. Like that's a very common phrase I hear during my consultations.
I would say 13 to 14 is when it really started around me then.
Yeah, I would agree. 13 to
Like
14.
just around eighth grade. Yep.
Exactly. But now we continue going forward. Now this is your thing since you were nearly a professional athlete. So take it from here.
Yeah, I had to learn it the hard way. No. Um, Another thing that shaped us wasn't just the video games. It wasn't just the card games. It wasn't just the movies and TV, but it was the very basic things of going out during recess time or PE time to play. For those who don't know what pickup games are, pickup games is when a group of people just come together in a set place or time and decide, we're going to have a game, we're going to make teams, let's pick teams. It's like really unstructured and is usually really casual, but can be really intense too. Uh, and the reason that this shaped us is because pickup games, the premise is you show up, you don't know who's going to be there. Usually the two people that everyone agrees are the best are put on opposite teams as captains, and then they take turns picking people. Well, I want you on my team. And then the other person says, I want you on my team. So basically, their favorites or the best people are picked off first, and the people who are picked last are usually seen as the least valuable.
Yes.
So this means it doesn't matter how bad you used to be. You are being evaluated on what you can do now. And it doesn't matter how good you might be or you're leaning towards in the future, because this is a pickup game. We don't care. We're just coming here to have fun, but we're still being serious on who the most valuable is. And so if you're being picked last or you're not being picked early on, right, that's your chance to show yourself, show the value. Score some goals, make some hoops. Whatever game it was, whether it's basketball or soccer or football, make some touchdowns. You got to show your value then and there. Otherwise, nobody recognizes it. And at the same time, if you were the best person yesterday and everybody knew you got injured, they're not going to pick you first anymore. It is that quick how the value changes. So if we wanted to have fun and we wanted to be seen as valuable or we wanted to be popular, that social status came with being good at the game we're playing. And this happened at recess. There's no way out of it. This is not just we're all going to go play at the basketball court after school because we have nothing else to do. This is happening in school where we have to be, and it's our time mandated fun. So everyone's going to do it the way they want to do it. And that's how we chose to do it as kids.
Agreed. I would argue, at least growing up in Detroit, the recess in those gym locker rooms were about as cruel as any board meeting I've been part of. Like,
Yeah.
like I would say my stress level was way worse back then than anything I've had to deal with as an adult, even when getting shot at. You know what I mean? Because you're trained for, when you're going into profiling, when you're hunting criminals, you're trained for that kind of stuff. But, there's nothing quite like being chosen last. But, and I'm just gonna, I have to be honest, is like I grew up being a very good basketball player, so I never experienced being chosen last. But the hardest thing for me to do is a lot of times, since I was one of the better basketball players, I would get chosen first, or I'd be one of the ones choosing others. And then you have a hard choice because some of your friends aren't good. So
Yep.
then the question is, you can only choose four other people. Do you choose the people that are your friends and then make the game more difficult for everyone else? Or do you go by the system that you're supposed to go by and only get the best? And those were some tough, hey man, those ended some friendships.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And the people who kept picking their friends, even when they weren't good, their team lost often, so people wouldn't let them choose anymore.
Correct. Well, the system kept you honest. It's like if you make a bad decision, it's like prison. If you're a shot caller in prison, you keep making bad decisions, they're not going to let you be a shot caller anymore. No
Mhm.
different than what happened on the playground. If you keep making bad decisions for the team, you don't get to be the leader anymore. But it's these it's that thought process that a lot of times do we ever really grow up past being a child? Makes you wonder.
Makes us wonder, man. Next slide. So
So,
now we're getting to some of the cheesy assets we found, but I really wanted to hit home on this. One of the biggest parts of our childhood, or even now through adulthood, is anime, and for good reason. They showed us examples of people to look up to and quotes that hit home that we've never forgotten since we were younger. And if you're unfamiliar, I'm going to explain these two from left to right. On the left is just a quick sequence from a show, one of the most award-winning animes of all time as of now, which is Naruto.
yeah.
And the guy in the lower left corner, kind of covering his eye, is supposed to be a team leader mentoring this kid right above him named Sasuke. And basically Sasuke is a angsty teenager with a interesting backstory and an attitude that needs to be put in his place. And he threatens his instructor. He says, "Shall I go and kill the people most important to you?" And his mentor's response is, "Everyone's already been killed." And he's saying it with a smile. And just a quick backstory, his father was an amazing warrior who committed suicide and disgraced the family. During training, he accidentally killed his female teammate. His male teammate suffered fatal injuries and basically died in front of his eyes. And then his mentor, who taught him, raised him, and trained him to be the warrior he is, sacrificed his life with his wife to save their entire village. Every person that he's basically looked up to is gone and killed, and he even accidentally killed one of them. And what he says to this guy, this angsty teenager, is basically, everyone's dead. You're not going to be able to hurt me. And he's saying it with a smile. So he knows not how to not react. He knows how to respond. He knows that this kid is also hurting the way that he hurt. And what he needs is a true leader. So it's not about beating people into submission. And I didn't put the quote up here, but I just wanted to give you an example of a quote that Kakashi said in that show that many of us still remember, which is, "People who break the rules are scum, but people who betray their friends are worse than scum." And that's something that we held on to since an early age and ever since we heard that line. In the rules of these trading card games, by buying knockoffs, right? And then trying to pass them off or not knowing that they're knockoffs, you're breaking the rules. We don't accept that. But if you ever betray a friend, somebody that you're supposed to have loyalty to, you break them, you're worse than a rule breaker. And nobody wants to deal with you and nobody will trust you. And
Absolutely.
that's something that we saw in the anime and we saw in real life. And people have named, I know it's cheesy, but people have named their children after anime characters.
Okay. I just want to add this because a lot of people don't realize this is a lot of these characters were the fathers that men never that little boys never had.
Mhm.
So if you don't have good male role models, if your dad's a piece of crap, if your uncle's a kind of a piece of crap, if you don't even know what a good person looks like, for so many young men, I'll fully admit, like I was one of those people. Like I didn't know what a man was supposed to look like early in life.
Mhm.
And these stories became what you thought a man should do. And this is why it keeps going on to this day. And when I said this is common, I, people don't understand. When you go to prisons, one of the largest sections in prisons is anime and manga sections. People wouldn't think that this would be one of the largest sections in prisons. But it's because so many young men, these are our fairy tales of how we wish we could be, of how we wish we could live. We're not living lives where we're afraid of everything.
Mhm.
Where you come face to face with the realities of your circumstances, you say, I'm going to get better at it. And that's what separates. It's really hard. Like you can go watch a movie like Gladiator, uh, Um, Gladiator is the one that comes up a lot, but that type of movie that's supposed to exemplify courage, I can show you some other movies that will likely, these anime cartoons that will put grown men to tears
Mhm.
because of how deeply the point hits. And so that's why me and Ryan always, when we feel necessary, we will add it because it's such an unbelievable cheat code when you're talking to people is to figure out where was some of their first examples of how to be an adult. Where was
Mhm.
some of their first examples of this is what a responsible person looks like. This is what a brave person looks like. So I just wanted to add that in there.
100%. And Not just the father figures that we hoped we had or that we didn't have, but they told us things that we never heard from our teachers that we needed to hear, from our friends that told us things that we never heard from our friends that we needed to hear, as well as our parents. So it gave us some real tough life lessons that we carried with us to school the next day. Next
Yep.
slide.
So.
It also, sorry, go ahead, Terrence.
No, I was just gonna talk about it. I'm not gonna spend too much time, but
Yep.
it's the storytelling. And when we're gonna talk more about this when we get into emotional intelligence of framing to get and truly understand the other person in front of us. But one of the unique aspects to this. And this is one of the reason Pokemon is so popular. One of the reason Call of Duty is so popular. These things that have really shaped a generation is the characters completely took away the ambiguity of what they were thinking. When you were watching these shows, they were full of internal monologues and you could see what they were going through, but you could also hear the voice and the angst. And when they were happy, they were happy. When they were suffering, they were really suffering. And it was unlike any other medium that I remember watching when I was a kid, or pretty much any of us saw. And one of the things that happened is there really weren't a lot of adults to really explain what we were watching. It's almost like you're watching the content emotion wise of a rated R movie, but you're an 11-year old. You know what I mean? And no one's framing this for you. So it's you become addicted to it because it's like this is a higher form of life than I'm seeing as a child. This is speaking to something bigger, and I don't really understand it yet. What was your thoughts, Ryan?
I think you hit the nail on the head, actually. They also gave us stories that supplemented our own life. Like we might not have gone through the stuff these characters did, but they still changed the way that we view the world. So that when we went out into the world and had similar troubles, we were thinking of these characters and these episodes and how they went through it and what they learned. And then we're using that to apply directly into our own lives.
Yeah,
I think that a lot of people, we'll talk about this in a couple of slides about the supposed emotional unavailability of men. But this raw, emotional, unfiltered storytelling has brought a lot of men to understanding and come to terms with their feelings. And what most often happens is men don't want to emotionally react to things that they don't need to. And so, in that simple miscommunication that happens often in trying to connect to somebody, um, he doesn't see what the value is, and the other person doesn't understand how to get him to see what the value is. So, that simple miscommunication, misunderstanding is what leads to the understanding that most men are quote unquote emotionally available. But whether it's in the playground, whether it's in class through trading card games, or through watching anime hours at a time, men have been in the emotional thick of it just as much as women or anybody else that young, just in a different format.
correct. It's like a key. It's a different key to open that conversation. But then once you open
Mhm.
that conversation, the amount of information that is disclosed is astonishing.
So, with that being said, I mentioned it, but the emotional unavailability or the supposed emotional unavailability. I mean, if we talk in another level here, if you have something in common with somebody and you know what that is, the more things you have in common, the easier it is to be their friend. The more topics you have available to you, the easier conversation flows. This is what it is at its base, is understanding that these are the things that men have connected with for the last 20, 30 years. This is what we went through. This is how many of us connected and have stories about our past pain, the lessons we learned, what helped us triumph over problems in our life, and all of that put together in our past experiences. So the easiest way to connect to somebody is to understand them through their past. And if you can understand how that past shaped them, how that in past inspires them or has brought forth their passions, and how they became the person they are standing in front of us, most of those men, most people will open up. It's just being able to have that first question or for that first conversation that shows that you know a tiny bit of what they went through.
Absolutely. It's, you know, a lot of us we're so similar to each other.
Hmm.
We really are. We're more connected than we give ourselves credit for, but a lot of times we look at our struggles as unique to us. And we're not aware of how often simple it is to connect with another person.
Hmm.
But it's taking the time to, and again, information is a key. I don't, like we're going back to being 6 or 7, is when you have information about how somebody was raised, their upbringing, key factors, you almost never run into things to talk about.
Hmm.
So
You want me to start this one, Terrence?
I can talk about it. So, heroes, not fairy tales. So, what I want to talk about is one of the key framings of almost all hero characters. And the hero characters, what's amazing about this is these are also traits that not just males, but people notice in others. And these are traits that if we can get better at them, completely transform our lives. So, emotional regulation responds, doesn't react, allows conflict without chaos. Men stay engaged when they're not bracing for explosions. And one of the reasons I always pick this character, Sigourney Weaver's character, from the movie Aliens, is I personally think she was the greatest action hero ever put on screen, and this character is constantly voted extremely high in male circles because she had all those qualities and more. And the movie, you saw Alien, you didn't see Aliens, right, Ryan? Or you haven't seen it in a long time?
I haven't. I recently rewatched Alien, but not Aliens.
It's so good. I don't know why Hollywood can't make movies like this anymore. But the other thing is her truthworthiness, her loyalty, reduces fear of betrayal or public embarrassment, foundation for commitment decisions. So for that, Ryan, because you added that, how does that resonate with you?
Which part specifically?
That entire paragraph.
Oh, okay. The self-responsibility or all of them?
Uh, just start with loyalty, go
Trustworthiness,
down.
loyalty.
Yeah, yeah, start with that and go down.
So what makes a hero, if we're going to be honest, is someone that people around them can trust, that holds themselves accountable to a certain level of responsibility where people say they're going to help us take care of it. Whatever the problem is, we're putting our trust in them. And that takes a level of loyalty. So, real heroes, not just the ones we see in movies, the correlation is that they are trustworthy, they are loyal. Are not easily persuaded or convinced to leave the plan of action that they truly believe in. So this level of loyalty, like if somebody's my ride or die, Terrence is my ride or die. When I go somewhere with Terrence, or we are thinking about a business idea, there is no second in my mind that I'm worried about how this man's going to screw me over. I don't need to be worried about betrayal because him and I have built a type of friendship, relationship, whatever, together in a manner we know each other. And we've demonstrated a level of loyalty and responsibility. So when a true hero makes people understand that that is the person we're relying on, So it reduces fear of betrayal and in public embarrassment because I'm trusting Terrence that if I mess up or he knows something about me that could hurt me, that he's not going to disclose it to other people. That's what makes a good leader. Heroes make good leaders. So these heroes are showing us that even when it's easy to hurt people, even when it's easy to not have accountability, when it's easy to turn a blind eye, when you believe in it and people are relying on you, you're going to put the effort in and show up. That's why it was so important to us. That's why it doesn't matter whether it's man or woman. It matters what the character of that person is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just, I mean, I can always like again, I've seen so many movies, but when that character Ripley was in the elevator loading up the guns, it felt so real because I've been in those situations where you're in an elevator and you're headed into a place you know is bad, where your survival is at risk, but you have a duty and you have a dedication to make it happen. And you're
Mhm.
like, yo, I don't care, this might cost me my life, but I'm gonna do this. And that scene in that elevator, it looked so real. It looked so real. Some of the greatest acting I've ever seen in my life. Because that's how it
Absolutely.
feels.
And one of the best female examples of this as well. Like I want people on the call to understand that when we look up to or men look up to examples like this woman as a hero, this is also an example of women that they are going to be attracted to as a
Yeah.
partner.
Yeah. I mean, you know what's kind of funny? I would say my wife is extremely similar. So yeah,
Well,
it
that's why I
makes
wanted
perfect
to
sense.
bring
Yeah.
that up because I'm surprised you haven't brought her up yet, man.
No, of course, because it's right in front of our eyes, so we don't think about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what happened. But see, that's because so much of our life we don't realize that we have been influenced. What we think
Mhm.
is successful, what we think is unbelievable, what we think is distasteful. A lot of these things are built over time, and if we don't take a hard stance and look at our life and say, "Let me try to figure out where did these ideas come from?" Because I remember I told you about this when I was in my 20s. I had to realize that a lot of my ideas weren't mine, that I had adopted ideas from other people and I never tested them.
Mhm.
And then when you go through that process of testing those ideas, you find out, man, maybe I was so depressed. Maybe I wasn't living the life I wanted because I truly didn't make a lot of choices. I
Mhm.
was following somebody else's decision of what success looked like instead of my own. And if you're following somebody else's path, you just made yourself lost.
It's easy for the sense of self-preservation to kind of fall in line with what everyone else is doing. But what we found out as men, whether it was early on or even early into our adult years, is the people who were the most at peace and the most successful and far ahead of us are the ones that figured that out the soonest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
All right. With that, we are coming to the end of our presentation. We just wanted to, make this and give a quick shout out to our pledge supporters. Ryan, I don't want to butcher anybody's name, so this is all you. Here's the baton.
Honestly, neither do I. So Anna M, thank you very much. Heather M, thank you very much. Kimberly Ryan, thank you very much. And the anonymous donor, thank you very much.
We
We
appreciate you.
appreciate you. They're going to a good cause.
Yeah, this coffee. I love it. We appreciate everybody.
We
Um,
appreciate you.
we appreciate everybody for attending, and now we're just gonna go over the news for the community. Book is still doing great. We got a lot of feedback on parts to fatten up and add more information of, especially in regards to love bombing and stuff like that. I'm gonna put out a small blurb about the book just to show some of how we designed it. I'm gonna show that probably over the weekend because that's taking a lot of our time. Ryan's doing a good job working on the workbook that's going to go with the book to help everybody kind of, mm, make it a lot more digestible, like some of the concepts. We're
It's
also
going to give you like an actual practical way to test your knowledge and then apply it. And you're going to get to see your own progress in getting better. That's really what it's meant to do.
nice. All right. So we're working on that. We're also working on a flashcard deck because a lot of people, especially people that have been the victim of a lot of manipulators, we're gonna put together probably 40 to 50 of the most common forms of manipulation,
Mhm.
and people just get used to seeing it. So then when you see it in the real world, you know exactly what you're looking at. But with that going forward, our next event is Holy Love or Hidden Control, a strategic guide to faith-based relationships. We've had a lot of Christians, people that are Muslim. We've had all kind of people ask us about what are some hidden forms of manipulation and problematic things that we have personally seen in, faith-based relationships. So luckily, me and Ryan have a ton of experience with this, so we're going to talk about that. Next is emotional intelligence and self-regulation, why relationships fall without them. We're going to try to give a nice, tight understanding of emotional intelligence in a practical way, as well as how you can identify if that's one of the struggling parts of a relationship and what to do about it. Other is mature dating, how to navigate love, loss, and new beginnings with wisdom. So this is specifically for people over the age of 40. I have a number of individuals in that age bracket that came to me for consulting, and every single one of them ended up in a successful relationship. So we're going to go through some of those strategies because it's a completely different strategy at that age range. Anything else we want to add, Ryan, before we close it down and open it up for questions?
Not at all. You can stop the recording whenever you're ready.
Absolutely. All right. Cool. I always hate this part. Oh, there it is.